Can we make heaven a place on earth? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. Can we make heaven a place on earth? So we have to begin with what makes it a heaven. What makes heaven a heaven, right? We got to figure out the parameters here to figure out if we can make it a place on earth. So we know that a reality has a resonating frequency in it. And it's that frequency that emanates and causes an effect of having a particular dimension in a time-space box. Whatever the size of that time-space is, you know, it could be one room, or it could be a planet, or a galaxy, or a whole universe. So in order to make heaven on earth, we'd have to have a resonating frequency of the reality that promotes excuse me, that promotes all of, or propagates all of, the perfect frequencies, because the frequencies are delivering the information that creates the reality. The vibrations that all of the sentient pieces of the dimension are connected to. The universal frequency being the tributary frequency that's anchoring that dimension. And all of the beings need to be on that vibration and connected to it in order to participate and exist and materialize in that time-space dimension. So when we envision this time-space dimension and everyone, so the first thing is that people need to, well, all the sentient pieces of it need to be vibing on that universal frequency. And then in turn, every piece of it would need to be in a state of harmony with all the other pieces. Because now we're looking at it from a systems perspective. I did a video, what is a system? And a system is, it's a whole with all different parts working together to create a complex whole. So in this system, the universal frequency would be the tie-in where everybody's vibing to it, everything's vibing to it, and they all act as a system in a complete whole. And in terms of motivation and what the conscious thought would be for the pieces to continue to do this, to be in harmony, is that to be in connection with it would emanate perfect bliss through their being and eternal appreciation of pure love vibe. So it would be the highest state of existence. It would be the highest vibe to connect to possible. The ultimate vibe. So that would be the motivation for everything in this system to stay connected to it, is that it's the best that you will ever feel. And then that motivates the harmony and the conscious connection to all the other parts of that reality, is knowledge of connection to bliss, knowledge that need to stay connected in order for the rest of the reality to materialize, and then all the other pieces in it also need to be in that conscious mindset, which means that necessarily everything in that realm and that plane of bringing heaven to earth, or heaven anywhere really, but in this case heaven to earth, is that every individual piece of the sentience, and I say that because it requires all the things to make it a heaven, like humans, animals, plants, waters, the air, the vibratory molecules, interactive subatomic layers, everything, all the way up and down the chain. Everything you can imagine in reality, anything that's present in it, you need the best. You need the best of the best, and all needs to be connected to this highest vibe consciously for the really cool things to be able to happen, to materialize. So in order to be able to connect it to this universal frequency that's in there, every individual piece of the sentience needs to be in a state of perfection. And in this theoretical philosophical discussion, a state of perfection would be defined as being in a perfect moral state. And to achieve a perfect moral state, the being needs to be conscious and self-aware. Because being in a perfect moral state doesn't mean that there aren't deviations that occur. It just means that they've gotten to a correct moral state for such a length of time that when variations come in and deviations come in, they're able to be aware of them and transmute them, and they don't disrupt overall harmony of the collective reality. It's a form of personal responsibility and transmutation of, you could call it karma, it would be accurate, but just personal responsibility for consequences of actions of self in an accelerated conscious manner, so that one can maintain connection to universal frequency and be an emanating point of bliss and perfection in the reality, so that the energy can flow. Because the real key to the existential part of creating a heaven on earth is that all of the nodes of the system are able to emanate the universal frequency, just like an electric circuit board or a CPU motherboard. That energy's got to be able to go around. And then if something in this scenario gets out of a perfect moral, like the perfect moral state, being in a, well, we'll call it a good moral state, a state of perfection, which means you're in a proper moral state, allows for the energy to flow through that node properly. And when a person or a thing or a sentient being comes out of, if they come out of the, like a perfected moral state, and they're starting to come out, and they're still, they could still be in a moral state, but they're coming out of it, and their trajectory is going the other way, then their capacity as a circuit to vibrate this perfected energy, this universal frequency, starts to diminish, and they start to, just like a circuit, they start to get heated up, and they get imbalanced, and they get warning signs that they need to go within and transmute whatever that blockage is that's slowing down the universal frequency from going through. And if they do, then it's fine. Then they'll get back up to normal level, and they'll cool down, and everything will flow better. And if they don't, if they allow themselves to continue out of a moral state into, you can still be in a neutral state at that point and still like remain in the circuit. But if you consciously go into an immoral state, if you place yourself into an immoral state, then that piece of the system won't be able to conduct the universal energy, and therefore phase shift out into a different dimension, essentially, and they'll lose access to the perfected bliss reality. And it's just a electrical engineering put into spiritual terms. So that's the requirement of the individuals in that system, is that they need to be able to conduct the universal frequency to a point where they can stay plugged in, because that's what makes the whole thing run. So you can have a perfected material area, and if it doesn't have the right frequency and the right vibration coming through, it's just a ghost town. And even worse, it could just be liminal space, like really, oh, that's cool. Like if the Taj Mahal had zero vibe and nobody'd been in there for 1,000 years, and you walk up, you'd say, oh, well, it's a beautiful ruin. They have a name for that. It's a ruin. And like, no matter how beautiful a ruin it is, it doesn't have life. And life is the key to heaven, because it's the emotion. Like when people reference heaven and they say, can we have heaven on earth? Really, the subtext of it is, can we live in a perfected state of bliss without worry, fear, doubt, any lower vibration entering the mind? Just complete emotional release into an eternal, enjoyable existence, while still enjoying the problem solvings of life and enjoying the different permutations of things, but without any sort of primal mortal fear. Like all lower frequency considerations really removed, and be able to enjoy viscerally, spiritually, and intellectually the vibration of bliss, and to be able to have simultaneously, which seems paradoxical but isn't, simultaneously the innocent awe of the wonder of our inner child and the great mature intellectual, physical, sensual spirituality and wisdom of our mature self simultaneously and at different points during the day, so that the experience is always fresh, always blissful, but in different ways, in the manner that someone would look into a diamond and there's always perfect facets around the diamond. However this reality would be entered into, it would just be different forms of perfect during the day. You know, a perfect meal, a perfect gathering, a perfect rest, perfect therapy, perfect love, you know, perfect arts and movies, perfect lovemaking, perfect everything. Like, you would just go from one to the other, and if we could bring heaven to earth. And so it really begins with entering into some level of perfected moral state. And it doesn't mean zero tolerance. Like I said, I think that's a misperception. It just means the ability to start being a node for that perfected universal frequency, which has leeway. There's ways, you know, it's like when a surfer first starts, you know, you got to catch some waves, and sometimes you don't catch them. It's the same thing with the wave of these frequencies, is you ride a wave, and then some waves will take you a little higher, and you get a little better, and then that wave will have an intersectionality with a wave that's from a higher level, right? So you're riding this wave, you don't even know you're kind of going up, you're on this, and then this higher wave, which kind of dips down, they'll have an intersectionality, and they go, oh, I'm going to switch to this wave. Next thing you know, you're on that wave. And in riding the wave higher and higher, you end up doing the moral work and the inner work and the growth to be able to connect to that frequency, to ride that frequency wave. It's really all about frequency wave riding. And at a certain point, you reach a threshold where it's just generally considered a perfected moral state, which people are born into, by the way. Personal philosophy. All babies are holy babies. Like, I've seen it. Like, babies come in and they get it. Kids get it. They know to ride the vibes, ride the frequencies. It's usually, 99 times out of 100, it's the external factors that decide that they shouldn't ride the vibes. So, if everyone in the system in that dimension is consciously linked into the universal frequency, and they've decided that that's the best there is in terms of manifesting a reality, which it is, it's the ultimate vibe, and they commit to it, at a certain point, time will basically melt away in the way that we know it, and it will become the universal version of time. Like, we're living in a low vibe frequency where time is melted to food scarcity, resource scarcity, politics, strategy, economy, all these things that are not in line with universal frequency. They're all artificial devices that came out of the minds of men. It's a very slavish association with time. So when everybody commits to this level, all these lower vibe principles and frequencies they'll melt away like a Salvador Dali painting. I mean, personally, I think that's what all the Salvador Dali melting clocks were, where he was displaying his transcendent mind out of the regular time into universal time. And so as the universal time descends, the lower frequencies melt off, and then people can explore the potential, and the other sentient beings can explore the potential that's in them that is restricted in a normally lower vibration reality. And the entire reality become a process of this ascension and the release of lower vibe principles and frequencies, as everyone sort of in a surreal manner ascends up into different forms of perfection. And that's the thing, is when it really comes in, it's the only thing uniform about it is the bliss and the perfection frequency. And then true diversity and true manifestation of all these different realities can flourish, like a huge flower garden with all different variety of flowers. Because at that point, everyone is really just channeling self-actualization and really then being able to use their imagination and manifestation abilities as designed in a human being, really maybe for the first time for a lot of people in their lives, and then doing it as a group, and then doing it in conjunction with animals and plants and the reality, and then the whole reality can actually come to life for the first time in a real way, and it'll just blow everybody's socks off. And that all comes from getting to a perfected moral state so that they can channel the energies and with confidence, knowing that, yes, all this energy is coming through us and we're just manifesting this reality together. And then that compounds on itself, because that is when you start to breed trust in other people, like true lasting trust, true lasting love goes around, because everybody's happy and they know that the more that they just vibe love and happiness in a real authentic way, because they know they can feel that we've all created this reality together, then it can really expand. It's sort of a quilt of love, and it grows bigger and more fabulous, and then everyone can look out with eyes anew and really feel it and love it and welcome it. And then that's where life really is. That's the highest design of life, is for this level of pure appreciation and harmony with other individuals in the experience, who at their will can be in like perfect blissful solitude. They can be in blissful yoga / harmony with other collectives, and anything in between. It's choose your own adventure in the best way possible. And it can be super mundane. It can just be, you're just in a great vibe and you just like cooking yourself a nice breakfast and reading a book, but you have a perfect book nook, and you got perfect reading weather, and when you step out and you feel like talking to people, like the exact perfect person you want to talk to is there. And it just continues, and it's just a really nice flow, and the flow can be gentle or it can be intense. All of these things really get unlocked, not unlike a Star Trek holodeck, but in reality. And that reality, it's a group reality, which is what keeps I know a lot of people in philosophy will say, well, how can you get to heaven if you don't like create a god, right? And like, how can you get into a perfected moral state if they're thinking that the moral state includes like some sort of like divine judgment? It doesn't. Secular ethics are all that's needed to create the heaven on earth, because the secular ethics demand scientifically, metaphysically, scientifically, your vibration is controlled by your moral choices. There's no getting around it. That's proven for like millennia. You got to reap what you sow. And all of the yogis, all the mystics, all the prophets, all the messiahs, anybody for like the last 10 millennia across the earth who's ever put any amount of inner inquiry into it has come back with the answer that you control your frequency and your vibration through your moral choices and your moral transmutation. And that's secular. So in order to make this heaven on earth, the infrastructure of it is secular. And the price of admission is doing the inner health work of your vibration. And that is what the ethics are. Those are what the secular ethics are. The secular ethics are that you have to do the things that make your vibration good enough to connect the universal frequency, and then also interact with your reality and other sentient beings in a conscious, aware manner, that your consequences have actions, or your actions have consequences in terms of you, but they also have them in terms of the other people, that you have to act in a conscious, aware manner, that is also the connection that everyone else in that reality is also tasked with. So you must then conform your actions and behaviors so that they do not take other people out of their ability to connect with the universal frequency. Because the universal frequency is no different than a clean stream of water. Completely secular, complete science. And so secular ethics dictate that you do not disrupt anybody else's connection to universal frequency. Don't even have to have God involved at all, not one little bit. And all of the responsibilities and all of the actions for all the consequences for your moral actions, in terms of the correlation between your moral decisions and your inner vibration, are completely in play. And honestly, people that are a-religious oftentimes have an advantage to be able to view themselves in such a clear, distinct way. Because they go, oh, I know that. Okay, that's fair. I have a relationship with my inner self. I know how to control my vibration. And some people who are religious, they get incorrect religious training. Now, lots of religions are really good for it, but lots of religions muddy the waters on that. And because there's a lot of, there's a lot of stories, and there's a lot of misinterpretations of things. And so for some people who have deeply ingrained religious beliefs, or even like outright superstitious beliefs that aren't even have a relation to the real metaphysical reality, when they get to this level of clarity, of secular clarity about how the spiritual inner life actually works and correlates to the manifestation of your reality, they're actually impaired in a lot of ways, because they have misinformation in their head about how to just get to the core mechanism of how they operate. Now, all that being said, to be a citizen of, or wrong word, to be engaged in this heaven on earth community that we're talking about, the connection to log in is to be able to get your vibration high enough in order to connect to the universal frequency. And in order to get your vibe to that level, you're going to have to go through many of the conceptual levels. You have to resolve a lot of the concepts that lead you up to it, so that you have knowledge and gnosis that frequency is real and true, and that it's metaphysically, scientifically true. There's no guesswork, it's no superstition, there's no faith, there's no blind anything. Like, in the ascension that you have to do on your own in a very yogi-like manner, in order to raise the vibration, to realize that it's true, and then to connect to it, and to be able to handle the immense amount of energy that comes in the connection, and to handle it gracefully and with ethics. As I was talking about earlier, secular ethics of just, okay, this is a vibe thing, and I control my vibe, and other people control their vibe, so I got to be vibe conscious. In order to get to that level, you're necessarily going to have to go through the lessons that lead you to understand that it's true, and then take ownership of it. And then you can embody it and be awesome. And then be harmonious in that area where the dimension is universal and heaven. And now you can understand heaven is a non-secular term. Heaven just means like a perfected level of reality. Doesn't matter if you think it happens in the body or out of the body. It's describing the same phenomenon. Just a system of life in an area, in a defined area, that is working at an optimum capacity. So, can we make heaven on earth? Yeah, I think for sure. And controlling your vibe and being vibe aware and getting your vibe up that's the price of admission, I think. So, well, thanks for spending some time here at Philosopher's Corner. It's always a pleasure to have you. I hope you found it helpful, and have fun. And let's make heaven a place on earth.